Hey guys, and welcome back. So one of the most important things about language learning is knowing enough words, knowing vocab, because even with the best grammar skills, if you don't know enough words, you will not be able to communicate and to understand other people well. So as someone who successfully learned 6 or 7 languages myself, I want to give you the most important tips on learning vocab that I've learned over the past 15 years. So I've come up with these 8 most important tips. Let's go through them now one by one so you can make sense of them. So the first tip is lerne regelmäßig. So learn or study regularly. Ideally daily, tägliches Lernen. Because think of it, if you just study, let's say once per week for 8 hours, that wouldn't be as good as studying, maybe every day for 30 minutes. So it's better to do something more realistic, 30 minutes, maybe 1 hour every day, rather than just once a week and then for a very long session. If you find it hard, just space it out evenly throughout the day. Maybe 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there, then 5 minutes there. You're on the bus, you might be waiting for a friend, and it's always a good idea to just take up your phone or a list or listen to something and so on. And that's the best strategy for daily learning. The second tip, wiederhole systematisch. So review systematically. So you read a text and there are some new words in this text and you look up the words, and it's a very good idea to look at the text again the next day and maybe again after 3 days and maybe again after 2 weeks. So take a look at the same text, maybe listen to the same song again, maybe listen to the same podcast again, and that's a very good idea. So review. And if you want to implement a real system, a true system, you can either use something people used to use in the past. It's like something like a box with 5, 6 or 7 compartments. And then you have your words there on little cards. And then if on one side there is the German meaning, on the other side there is the English translation, and ideally also an example sentence. We'll come to that. And then if you test yourself and you know the word, you knew the German word, you can go to the next level, so the next compartment. And if you didn't know it, it stays in the same compartment. So that's what people used to use in the past, and it's still a very good idea. With some drawbacks, you have to take the box with you on holiday, on the bus, etc. And also it might be a bit, impractical with many, many words. So there's also something called spaced repetition. And there's some great apps for that do the system for you automatically. So basically, you feed it the words. In some cases, you can also download, lists of 500 or 1,000 words, but it's best to put in your own words, and then the app, your mobile app, decides which words to show for you on that day. Then you have to say it was very easy or medium or hard or very hard, and then the app with its algorithm decides when to show you the same word again. So there are some great apps for that. What I used to use was Anki. And it's free for Android. I think it's $20 for iPhone, but there are many similar apps to that. So any kind of vocab app, flashcard system, especially spaced repetition, is highly recommended. But I would personally mainly recommend it for the beginning level. So A1, A2, and maybe even B1, because there are not too many words for these levels. And you need these 500 words for A1. You need these X thousand words for the B1 level. And there are lists for that, for the Goethe B1 exam, for example. But after the A2, or at the latest after the B1 level, I wouldn't recommend such apps anymore, because then you get, you have to repeat, you have to revise and study with the app for 1, 2, 3, 4 hours a day. It can get pretty overwhelming with time, and then it's better to use real things like, real texts, real podcast episodes and songs, etc. So for the beginning levels, I definitely recommend these apps. Later on, I think it's not the most ideal thing to do anymore. If you're serious about learning German, you should definitely check out my 27-hour-long Beginners A1 course. Join over 1,000 students that master the A1 German level with me. All details down below. It's the first link in the video description. So let's take a look at the next tip. The third tip is context. So definitely you need context. Wörter bleiben so besser im Gedächtnis. The words will stick, they will remain, they will stick better to your memory. Das Gedächtnis, memory. So even when doing something like flashcards or these spaced repetition apps that I showed you for the second point, even there it's best to have context. So it basically means don't just write the word, the German word, and on the other side the English word. It's always best to have a sentence at least. So at the very least I would include one sentence, maybe 2 or 3 sentences, because it's important to see how the word is used, the prepositions, the cases, and what other words we typically combine with it, so collocations. And so at least 1 or 2, 3 sentences. So like I was saying for the first point, it's also a good idea to study words by reading a whole text. So people think they need to use vocab list or these apps that I showed you for the second point, and they do have a place, but for more context, it's also great to have a full text. So by reading a full text again and again and again, you can learn the same 20 and 30 new words really, really well. So context means at least a sentence, but maybe even better, a full text, a full podcast episode, a full Netflix episode, a song, and so on. Fourth point, sei kreativ. Aktiviere dein Langzeitgedächtnis. Be creative, activate your long-term memory. So if you struggle with a word and you keep forgetting the same word, you can make up a story, you can have images in your head and maybe even use mnemonic devices, and that will help you memorizing the word. Just a silly example, but there's the German word bellen, and it means to bark. It's like the sound that a dog does. I could just hear it a minute ago outside on my street here. So bellen is the dog sound, basically. If you keep forgetting this word, it's not the most important word, but just an example. If you keep forgetting this word, you can make up a story like, there is the English word bell, and it somehow resembles the German verb bellen. So whenever the dog hears the bell, like ding dong, whenever he hears the bell, the doorbell, he starts barking. And then you have the connection, oh yeah, bell, then you just add en and then you get the German verb. So these are temporary fixes that you use for a couple of times and then you won't need this anymore. So be creative, make up these funny things, these funny stories, these things in your head, and that will definitely help you as well. For the fifth point, nutze alle Sinne. Use all your senses. So basically that's hören. You can listen to things. With your course book, I'm sure there are MP3s or you have a CD. And you can also listen to podcast episodes, easy German, YouTube videos. So listening to what it actually sounds, the pronunciation, the prosody, the intonation, that's all super important. Also sehen, basically see the texts and look at the words, so basically read, but also look at people's mouths and the way they gesticulate, their mimics when they speak German. And also, of course, more actively sprechen and schreiben. So try to do all of it. It might be difficult because you might not have someone to be able to speak to. In such case, you can, worst case scenario, speak to yourself, in front of a mirror. It sounds silly, but it's also a great idea actually. Or you can find a private tutor. Okay, the sixth piece of advice is sei aktiv. So Vokabeln im Alltag anwenden. So anwenden is to apply. So basically use the new words, use the new vocab in your daily life. If you don't use them, you will definitely lose them very soon, so you will forget them again. Try to use it in some way. Write a text, speak to a friend who also knows German, ideally a native speaker. Use the new words and forms and constructions with your private tutor. And again, worst case scenario, speak to yourself. Tip number 7, Verwandtschaften, so relationships. If you learn a new word, it's always a good idea to take a look at maybe similar words. So Wortfamilien, Synonyme und Antonyme. So basically, Wortfamilien would be something like, if you have the verb wohnen, which is to live, to reside, to live somewhere. And there is also the noun die Wohnung, which is an apartment. That's just one example. There are thousands of examples for that. And that can help you, these connections. And also synonyms. There is maybe günstig And then there is also billig, which has a very similar meaning. Of course, billig can sometimes have this negative connotation, but the first meaning is actually the same. It means it's not expensive, the price is pretty low. And also antonyms. So if you have gut, there is also the antonym, which is schlecht. And groß and klein and so on. So try not to learn just one word, try to learn several words at a time, which may seem more challenging, more difficult, but you'll be surprised it's actually easier to learn several words that have a connection than learning one isolated word by itself. And the last tip, last but not least, hab Spaß. Motivation ist entscheidend. So motivation is key, it's crucial. So don't torture yourself. Don't force yourself using methods and using things you don't actually like. Look for texts that you actually like. Look for texts that are interesting, that are, suitable for your level. If you're on the A2 level or even A1 level, you can definitely find texts online, maybe even in your local library. You can find texts for learners of German. You can find easy podcasts. You can find easy videos. Check the playlist Super Easy German on the YouTube channel Easy German. So there's something for each level. And then once you're a bit more advanced, you can actually use topics you like. Look for texts on fashion, sports, maybe bodybuilding or ice skating or basketball, whatever your hobbies might be, or travel vlogs, etc. Or maybe you like songs, maybe you like this and that topic. So look for topics and methods that you actually enjoy, because it should be a fun process. It shouldn't be a hassle and a torture. It's still challenging and it still takes a while to learn a new language, even with these wonderful tips, but they will hopefully make your life a bit easier. Just don't give up. And in 6 months and 1 year and 2 years from now, you'll be amazed how much progress you can make. So don't forget to check out my complete A1 beginners course. It's a full 27-hour long video course. And I'll see you in the next video. Bis bald.